This is Outsiders.
Good morning and welcome to a very special edition of Outsiders, Australia's top-rating Sunday morning conservative show with Rita Panahi, with James Morrow and myself, Rowan. We are dedicating this show to celebrating the genius and inspiration of Charlie Kirk and to mourn his untimely death. Charlie was an inspiration to millions across the Western world, a giant when it came to tackling the madness of woke political correctness and the insanity of identity and gender politics, to engaging in civilized, intellectual and heartfelt debate with facts, compassion, understanding, humility and love.
I just want to say I'm a transgender male. What age should kids be able to get things like hormone therapy? Because I don't know what's true, what's not.
Tell me, are you comfortable telling me your story?
I've known that since like third grade, and I'm currently 19, almost 20. I've known basically since then. I didn't start going by like a different name until 7th and 8th grade. I just don't know, like, with the whole medical stuff, like what's true, what's not, what's helpful, because I've heard so many different opinions.
First of all, thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
The left around the world have falsely demonised Charlie Kirk as a misogynist, as a sexist, as a transphobe, homophobe, you name it. He was none of that.
I'm going to have an opinion that very few people will ever tell you, which is I want you to be very cautious putting drugs into your system in the pursuit of changing your body. Mm-hmm. I instead encourage you to work on what's going on in your brain first.
Charlie would debate with anyone on any subject, yet he didn't use any debating tricks. Only thing he did was he told the truth.
I think what you need first and foremost is just a diagnosis. Mm-hmm. Just someone that is going to listen to what you've gone through, listen to what else is going on. My prayer for you, and again, very few people will say this, I actually want to see you be comfortable in how you were born.
Yeah.
I know that you might not feel that way, but I think that is something that you can achieve. I think that with the right team and the right people, you don't have to wage war on your body, you can learn to love your body.
That clip takes on an even more important significance in the light of the latest news about Charlie's death, as we'll discuss in a second. Plus, we'll be chatting to some truly amazing guests, including friends of his, about the man, Charlie Kirk, about his legacy, and about who can carry his torch forward. Can anyone fill those enormous shoes? What about the insane reaction from the left, including the lunatics here in Australia? This is a turning point, as Charlie so prophetically called his own movement, not only for America, but for all of us in the democratic, supposedly freedom-loving West. Which way our societies turn, away from violence or towards it, how we respond, will shape the world our children and grandchildren live in. Lots to talk about, but first, let's grab the latest news. So, James and Rita, this is extraordinary. We now hear that the killer, the shooter, the alleged shooter, was in a relationship. His lover was a transgender individual transitioning from male to female. That's the latest news. And this was the same individual that texts were sent to his so-called roommate regarding the rifle and casings. Rita Panahi.
Yes, Tyler Robinson's partner is cooperating with the FBI. He's been helpful, is what's been reported. And yeah, he is trans. Is just another development. It adds an extra layer to what could have motivated this guy. But this guy, if he is the culprit, and the authorities are very confident they have their man, he's told us why he's done this. There's a lot of conjecture that the left is bending over backwards, trying to cast some doubt about whether this was a politically motivated assassination, when there is zero doubt, because the killer told us why he did it. He hasn't been shy about saying why he did it. And if we don't accept reality, if we don't face up to the truth, we're not going to get past this point. And worse than trying to cast doubt about what motivated this killing are those dishonest actors. Sometimes they're just dishonest, sometimes they're stupid. I really don't care which one's which, but they lied. They have fabricated pictures of the suspect in a Trump shirt. They've tried to cast him as some sort of MAGA individual or Republican just because his family happened to be church-going, religious conservatives. This guy is the black sheep of the family. The family have said, he's been off the left. And I think it just shows, James, that just growing up in a conservative, religious family doesn't necessarily immunise you or protect you from this
absolutely, James.
Poisonous doctrine.
And I mean, look, Rita, everybody out there, everybody on the stage, we know families are complicated. You have different people come from the same parents, the same environment, and just different things sort of wind up happening to them over the course of life. And that is just life. But the gaslighting, the unbelievable gaslighting that we have had, and I see this coming from all quarters of the left. It's not just the ones who are celebrating gleefully his death. And I'm going to be talking a bit later in the program about people who've been losing their jobs as a result of this, and why that's actually not a bad thing. But this idea that, and you see these posts, I see them all the time. He was a conservative. He was brought up a Mormon. He grew up in Utah. His parents were cops. This, that, the other thing. To suggest that, every single one of these things says, except that, even The Guardian. So when you read it in The Guardian, and they're telling the truth about it, this is the truth. They talked to people who were friends of the family. They said he was incredibly radicalized. They said that a few years ago he really started to, and I think, we need to talk about universities and just what's happening on our university campuses right now, that people get so radicalized on them. But that he talked about Charlie Kirk, he talked about the right, he talked about fascism, he talked about trans stuff. Now we know why there's an angle on the transgender side there, because, of course, if he's had this relationship. But it is anything, they will do anything they can to prevent themselves owning the fact. And I'll tell you, we got to be careful, because I'm not somebody who subscribes to the words equals violence thing. That's the left thing. But these are the same people who have been pumping everybody through this message that Donald Trump is a fascist. People like Charlie Kirk are fascists. They are an imminent threat to democracy, the democratic way of life, the American republic, freedom, liberty, all of these things.
Well, when you say...
And when they do that, that creates the existential threat, that creates a circumstance where this happens.
I don't think we have to be shy about saying that at all. There's clear incitement for this crime. Yeah. There's clear incitement for the assassination attempt against Donald Trump. There's clear incitement when you say words of violence, you rationalise responding with violence. When you call someone a fascist, when you call someone hateful, when you falsely malign them as all sorts of things and assign to them all sorts of beliefs they don't even have, then you are giving some deranged individual a license to do exactly what happened. Now, Charlie Kirk, he's been painted as this, radical, hard right figure. His opinions are so mainstream in the conservative movement, mainstream in the community. He is not some radical firebrand. And I've heard quite a few quotes of his, again, weaponised to try to justify the way the left is reacting to this, the ugliness, just the callousness of which the way so many are responding. Things like, there's a quote going around, I don't like empathy. People have thrown that around. I hate the word empathy. If you look at the whole quote, he's talking about, he prefers the word sympathy. Yes. Because empathy denotes that you feel what someone else is feeling. So you see someone who's hurt and you're also hurting, while sympathy is a far more genuine... So it was a semantic argument that has now been...
Weaponized. This is what they do all the time. They take things out of context. But Rita, your point about the transgender, the incitement and so on, what was fascinating and tragic about the death is that Charlie Kirk never condemned anybody for being transgender. He never attacked anybody. He never questioned that choice, other than to say maybe there's an alternative, and maybe through debate and discussion with other people, with experts, you might find a way to actually arrive at being comfortable in your own body. Now, what is fascinating is that his slogan, "Prove me wrong," the only way this alleged killer could prove him wrong, the alleged killer in a relationship with a man transitioning to a woman, the only way he could prove him wrong was to shoot him.
Well,
and that just is so tragic, but so it shows you the depth of depravity of the ideology, which you mentioned. I'll be talking about it later in the show. The university, left wing, these factories of toxic poison, they may well be at the root of the problem here as well, because a young kid who seemed a shy but perfectly nice kid goes off to college, and suddenly.
But hang on, we need to talk about another point.
We have a killer. We
need to talk about another point here too, because one of the most toxic, most evil lines that we keep hearing too. You know, you want to talk about things where they take something he said out of context.
Yes.
Right. The number one thing that they've been taking out of context is this whole idea that, you know, Charlie Kirk supported the Second Amendment, which is the right to bear arms, and said that you have the Second Amendment, there will be some deaths because of that, but it is worth it to preserve liberty. And he had a much bigger explanation around that, and including saying things like, you know, I think he made the argument that, well, we could ban all cars tomorrow, but we have the right to drive, and you would have no road toll, but there you are. You know, and so you have all of these incredible videos, and I played a bunch on my show Friday, and we'll see some more later on, I'm sure, of people saying, ha ha, well, you believe the Second Amendment, how ironic you got shot. This gets to the heart of the violence, the dark, nihilistic violence at the heart of the left. Because what are they saying there? They're saying to people, they're saying, if you don't take away the left's guns, the left might be forced to shoot you. I mean, it is an admission of their own violence.
And it's also an admission that what we are seeing at the moment, that it is the left who have got an issue with this. This both sides nonsense. I have zero time for it. The fact that towns across America aren't burning down, the fact that shops aren't being boarded up, the fact that there aren't people rioting, looting like BLM did, like Antifa did, despite this horror, tells you everything. The people who've got all the guns in America, which is predominantly the right, aren't using them to exact revenge. They're not the ones who they're worried about. When they board up shops during election campaigns, guess what? They take them down as soon as a Democrats win an election, because they know the danger's past. If a Republican wins, then they expect to see shop windows smashed. So this is the reality. The left has a violence problem. It's been normalised. It's been accepted. The media has a lot of complicity in minimising that violence, trying to confuse
to both sides, to gaslight it.
Exactly.
When it's not a both sides thing. And I've heard a lot last couple of days, well, what about Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania? What about the attack against him? That was from a leftist. What about the attack against some other Democrat politician? Again, from leftists. So you've got left-on-left violence. You can't blame...
The other key thing, there's another key thing. Sorry, there's one other key thing.
Also got to mention the number of shooters, which was exactly the point that Charlie Kirk was talking about when he got shot. I mean, this thing is so replete with ironies and tragedies, but he was discussing the issue of the trans killers and mass killers in America, and the fact that they do seem to be fueled, however it works out, by this ideology, by this transgender ideology.
The shooter waited until that moment when he was asked about the number, because there's been a number of trans-identified individuals who have shot up
including
Christian
that
schools.
church in Minnesota 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Catholic, 2 small children killed, others shot. And he was asked about that, and he started to answer it, and that's when that shot fired. And it was just... It took some time for them to announce that he had passed away, but if you saw a close-up of what happened, you knew...
It was horrific.
No
I want to talk about those reactions and those responses, and I want to start off just by playing a little clip. This infuriates me, this endless repetition of, he was a far right-winger, extreme, as far, which the left use all the time. This is the ABC in Australia, how they announce the news. Have a listen.
He was a conservative influencer who campaigned for gun rights. Now, the American right-wing commentator Charlie Kirk has been shot and killed in what's been described as a political assassination.
So there you have it, James. All the cues, far-right guns, exactly what you were talking about.
Disgusting.
It's so far removed from the real man.
It's removed from the real man, and I'll tell you, none of the people here on the ABC or any of the other people we're going to see here today spent any time listening to what Charlie Kirk had to say. They had no idea what his whole thing, which was about free speech and Socratic dialogue, which are two things that the left hates, because the left's argument techniques are shut up or we'll smash your store window.
Shut up or we'll shoot you.
Yeah, shut up or we'll shoot you. That's their technique. And it reminds me so much also, like when Kim McWilliams, the managing director of the ABC, had that whole line about ABC, about Joe Rogan, when he was giving the press club speech. It was clear he'd never listened to a minute of the man. But it's this sort of thing here.
Exactly, but I want to ask Rita about one of our politicians here. A so-called independent environmentalist, Charlie Steggall, at a beautiful electorate on Sydney's beaches. What happened there? She seemed to be quite like some of the controversial posts about Charlie Kirk's death.
Yes, she did. She liked one by a leftist influencer that has been deleted. This is how bad this post was. Even this far leftist, what's her name, Hannah Ferguson, she deleted it, but not before Charlie Steggall liked it. And it was a post that was seeking to rationalise this assassination, saying that, sometimes violence is necessary. Does this murder advance the leftist agenda? No, it doesn't. But, I can understand why people... It was an absolutely despicable, morally bankrupt post. The ideas in it, I think... You know what? I actually don't mind seeing stuff like this because I think sunlight is the best disinfectant.
Yeah, we know what they're thinking.
And when people show you who they are, you believe them. And when people go and share this disgusting content, when they like it... Charlie Steggall needs to explain this. Charlie Steggall needs to explain why she endorsed this post. If it wasn't her, if it was a staff member, what is she doing about it? She hasn't answered any questions. We've gone to her office and she has refused to provide any sort of explanation. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said people who indulge in this sort of disgusting antics in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's murder, they're not welcome in the US. So we might have some very high-profile individuals who will not be allowed into the US. And I can say there won't be too many Americans who will be upset about that. I'm sure there will be some on the left, but I think most Americans don't want people who can sit there and try to rationalise a brutal murder, a man being shot and killed in front of his family because he was having a debate. Why would you want those sorts of people in your country?
And let's make the point, James, that Charlie Steggall replaced former Prime Minister Tony Abbott in his electorate. So this is a wealthy Sydney electorate. Her entire campaign, her entire political position is climate change and we've got to save the planet and all this and look after the kids and so on. But here we have liking the argument that violence is acceptable in a political format. I would
think, and this is the thing that's so ironic to me here, because I've seen lots of politicians in the US and plenty here too, and plenty of public figures now say, geez, whatever our side is now, do we need to worry more about security? So the idea that you're a politician of any stripe, I don't care whether you're right or left or as she is, a teal, the idea that you would in any way be seen to be countenancing any sort of argument that says, well, maybe this one time a little bit of political violence is okay.
Because they never think it applies to them, James. This is why the left play these games, because they know it's a one-side battle.
Yeah.
They're not scared. When you're a leftist, no matter how far left, radical, nutbag you are, you can go to any university campus in this country or America and you will not fear giving a speech. You will not fear being shot, being bombarded with abuse, being chased off campus, having those who come to hear you be violently attacked. You don't have that. You don't have that fear as a leftist. Just look at what's happening in our own country, never mind America. It is a one-sided fight. So, I'm not surprised we've got leftist politicians indulging in this sort of moral decay because it doesn't apply to them. She will not fear that. And now
she won't. No, I'm sorry.
And I'm not saying she should fear it.
I'm not saying she should fear it either. But So you see, history is a funny thing, right? History is a really funny thing. And there have been plenty of examples in history when people have thought, oh, no, I'm off with the good guys on the left here, and they're going to send their violence somewhere else. And I tell you what, eventually you wind up to the right of the people who got the guns, and then you are in strife. And this, I'm not saying that's going to. I'm not saying that's going to happen in Australia.
Yeah.
Pray it doesn't happen in Australia. But the point is that once you start to normalize, it's this whole normalization of political violence.
I want to carry on. Okay.
Go on with this here for a second, because there's also this other sort of move, and it's, again, intellectually bankrupt. And we need to talk about these sorts of intellectually bankrupt defenses for this murder, and where they're trying to minimize this into kind of just the background noise of life. Oh, well, somebody got shot. Babies are dying in Gaza. Somebody starved here, this sort of thing. And how can you be mad about Charlie Kirk when all of these other things that we on the left are concerned about are happening? What that is doing, it is a conscious effort to minimize the horror of what happened so that it can happen again. This is what is being set up here. It is sinister. It is evil. The surface has been scratched. We see what's underneath it there.
I want to go on, Rita, to the way in which these people come out of these universities, come out of this kind of hard left indoctrination centres, and then go on to either become podcasters or work in politics or staffers. And this is the long march through the institutions. I'll be talking about that later. But have a listen to someone who is supposedly an influencer in Australia, Clementine Ford. She was a journalist for a while, probably still thinks she is. But have a listen to the level of not only, in my opinion, depravity, but kind of absolutely ridiculous and muddled thinking from this individual speaking about Charlie Kirk.
Like, his most ferocious male fans are so fucking gay for him. They're all crying out of their penises in my messages. You're so mean. You're a fucking fat. You have no morals. Charlie's dead. Off, losers. Just remember, he died doing what he loved, defending guns. He took a bullet for the cause, and according to Charlie Kirk, a few deaths a year from guns is a small price to pay to defend the Second Amendment. So what more could he possibly ask for? It's a tribute and legacy to the pointlessness of his life.
So, I mean, James, just to reiterate what you said before, because she illustrates that very point. They attack the individual relentlessly. They try and paint him as some morally depraved person who gets what he wants. That's the trick of the left, to make kids feel their entire moral universe gets exploded. The new morality is, if you're of the left, then you can get away with doing whatever you want because you're attacking the evil right.
Jumps in, no normal human being, no one with any sort of sense or rationality would look at that video and come out of it thinking Charlie Kirk is the depraved one. The depravity there is clear. That is just so loathsome, so absolutely vile. How you could be that full of hate?
Well, let me play you another one. Here's another Australian influencer, so-called Abby Chatfield. This is before the assassination, but it's only a couple of weeks ago when she appeared on to be
Not
advocating.
Appeared. She was.
Here you go.
She was.
Have a listen.
Let's have a listen.
Americans, when are you going to do it? Why isn't it already done? Every day there's another happening, right? Awful for your country. Awful, right? Why don't we redirect this energy to something else? You know? There's all these incels that are going, oh, what the me? So they go and do, you know what would actually make people respect you a little bit and make people want to you? Is if you did it.
So this ridiculous woman, in fact, it turns out it was a hardcore leftist whose partner, it appears, was transitioning. This was no incel that committed this murder, allegedly. James, the sheer ridiculous notion of what she was saying, but more importantly, this endless calling for violence from young people of the left, even here in Australia, is sickening.
Pick up on something else too. You know, like that mocking that both of those did of people who were supporters of Donald Trump or Charlie Kirk or whoever. The irony, the absolute irony. You know, you've got Abby Chatfield and Clementine Ford, these examples of normal humanity, going out there and attacking people on the right, conservatives, fans of Trump, fans of Charlie Kirk, fans of whomever, as being these, weirdos and so on. I mean, I'm sorry. Put your average group of Charlie Kirk supporters next to your kind of purple-haired, pierced people who are all out there on the left here, and I'll tell you which side is the weird one. But let's put that aside. Let's put aside the personal attacks. That whole thing with Chatfield there at the end, that is precisely what I'm talking about. And these videos that they're, sending straight into people, talking one-on-one, do it, fascist, kill, you'll get love, you'll get love. This is such a sinister cult-like behavior. It is really shows, I think, the left as a really sinister cult when it goes down into these areas.
Well, Rita, just quickly, I'll just be talking later about how this is tipping into a spiritual war as well as a political war, and I think you've touched on that there, James. But they're not alone. They might be the extremists, but Rita, this is what Barry Cassidy, supposedly one of our, left-wing, supposed sensible journalists or sensible TV commentators, top of the ABC for many, many years. He was out there basically saying what you were saying earlier, mocking people for saying that this was some kind of right-wing, Trump-supporting guy. Cassidy was out there saying Trump's an embarrassment, and Cassidy was out there basically accusing the killer of being a right-winger who thought Charlie Kirk wasn't to the right enough. That's how deranged even the so-called intelligentsia in Australian left-wing politics are, Rita.
Well, we're not a very bright country, if that's the Barry Cassidy, I mean, you would think he would be old enough to know better. It's one thing to have these young, demented banshees just mouthing off for attention on Instagram and TikTok, but some elder statesman of Australian journalism falling for this craziness. And you've got to think, how can you post? He deleted the post, so do we give him credit for that? I don't see an apology or a correction, but he did delete it, but not before it had circulated. And their readiness, their eagerness to believe the unbelievable, that it must be a Trump supporter who shot the man who helped to get Trump elected. Yeah, think about that.
Not so bright, like you said,
exactly.
James.
Well, no, exactly. But I mean, this is what passes for mainstream thought now on the left. I mean, the ABC, as you say, Barry Cassidy, eminent doyen of that kind of sort of Balmain sort of journalism that he committed. I would be very interested to see next week's Media Watch to see whether or not they take on.
Are you kidding me?
Of course they won't. Of course they won't.
Will just feature this show saying that our reaction is the problem. We're pouncing.
We're pouncing.
On this issue. We're politicizing.
You'll be talking pouncing.
I'm talking about pouncing later on in the show.
Political murder. I mean, how dare we?
Yeah.
Lots more to talk about here on Outsiders. Rita's broken the news. We're not a very bright country here. I'm sorry. In many cases, that's true, except on this show. After the break, Rita's reality check. An American Corey DeAngelis will be joining us in the studio. Lots here on Outsiders. Don't go away. Back in a tick.
You're watching Outsiders with your hosts, Rowan Dean, James Morrow, and I'm Rita Panahi. And soon we'll be speaking to a man whose activism gets things done, a man who has worked tirelessly for parental rights in the US. But first, I want to take a minute to pay tribute to Erica Kirk, the wife of Charlie, the widow now, who must explain to two little girls why the dad they adored is no longer putting them to bed at night. We've rightly paid tribute to Charlie and all he achieved and all he would have achieved. He would have been president one day. He would have. I honestly believe that. But it's Erica now, the woman who stood beside him and who made it clear yesterday she was determined to finish the work Charlie started. When you see the disgusting displays of hate and vitriol from the increasingly sociopathic left, when you see the morally and intellectually bankrupt rationalisations from cowards and enablers, think about this woman and what she's enduring with grace and strength. Think about her loss, a loss she suffered because the modern left has become so deranged with hate that they think debate, they think speech equals violence and should be met with violence.
Charlie loved his children, and he loved me with all of his heart, and I knew that. Every day I knew that. He made sure I knew that every day. Every day he would ask me, how can I serve you better? How can I be a better husband? How can I be a better father? Every day. Every day. He was such a good man. He still is a good man. And I talked to her and she said, Mommy, I missed you. I said, I miss you too, baby. She goes, where's Daddy? What do you tell a 3-year-old? She's 3. I said, baby, Daddy loves you so much. Don't you worry. He's on a work trip with Jesus, so he can afford your blueberry budget.
Erica Kirk had a message for Charlie's killer and all those who set him on the path to murder. The radical left that has dominated the culture from Hollywood to academia to increasingly the corporate world, the political, media and activist class that has celebrated Charlie's murder, that think assassinating a young man capable of dismantling their arguments is somehow justifiable or at least understandable. All those who incited this murder, this assassination, Erica Kirk had a message for them. They don't know what they've unleashed.
The evildoers responsible for my husband's assassination have no idea what they have done. They killed Charlie because he preached a message of patriotism, faith, and of God's merciful love. But they should all know this. If you thought that my husband's mission was powerful before, you have no idea. You have no idea what you just have unleashed across this entire country and this world. You have no idea. You have no idea the fire that you have ignited within this wife. The cries of this widow will echo around the world like a battle cry. No one will ever forget my husband's name, and I will make sure of it. It will become stronger, bolder, louder, and greater than ever.
They may have killed Charlie, but they have created millions more. Charlie moved the culture. He had the rare ability to persuade so many people, particularly young people across the political divide, to embrace conservative values. President Trump understood better than most the enormous influence of Charlie Kirk, and Erica paid special tribute to the president.
Mr. President, my husband loved you. And he knew that you loved him too. He did. Your friendship was amazing. You supported him so well, as did he for you.
Yes, Charlie helped shift the culture. The culture has shifted. A few years ago, you wouldn't have painfully woke sporting leagues like the NFL or baseball leagues paying tribute to Charlie Kirk, having a moment's silence for a conservative like Charlie Kirk. But that's precisely what happened. The NFL, Major League Baseball, major entertainers like Morgan Wallen, even Coldplay, acknowledged the terrible loss Charlie's murder represents. And it is an enormous loss, a heartbreaking, maddening loss. But it's not the end of the movement. It's not the end of Turning Point USA, which Charlie founded, or its chapters around the world. It's only the beginning.
And in a world filled with chaos, doubt, and uncertainty, my husband's voice will remain. And it will ring out louder and more clearly than ever. And his wisdom will endure.
Thanks, Rita, and our thoughts with Erica Kirk and the kids. Joining us now here in studio is American Culture Project Senior Fellow and best-selling author Corey DeAngelis. Corey, thanks for joining us, and great to have you here in Australia. You're here for CPAC. We'll talk about that as well in a second. But I just want to ask you, how does a clean-skinned kind of young guy, clean-cut young guy, smart, gets a scholarship in a family, loving family, doesn't seem to have any political interest particularly, rock off to tertiary education, university, college, whatever you want to call it, and a couple of years later there he is sniping, killing a man with a rifle. How does this happen?
Yeah, there's no clear answer to that, right? But there are some clues and some things happening in society in America right now and the rest of the world is you have the left-wing ideology infiltrating corporate media, you have them infiltrating the school system. He was at a university, and when you look at the critical race theory ideology, diversity, equity, inclusion ideology, it teaches you to hate your country, it teaches you to hate right-wing values, and most importantly, I think the problem that we've seen increasingly over the years is that the left has equated words with violence. And so when you're told that this person is an evil person, this person is repeating things that are equal to violence, well, then if you respond with actual physical violence, you're basically justifying these acts, which are terrible and not justified in the least bit. But this should send a signal to everybody that you have to tone it down when it comes to, we need to have free speech and free exchange of ideas, and we can't just respond to those ideas with violence. What really breaks my heart with all of this is that this happened at a university, and universities are supposed to be bastions of free speech. They're supposed to be places where you have this free exchange of ideas, and Charlie was doing that. Charlie brought the debate to the universities, doesn't call for violence, and you have him assassinated in the very place where you're supposed to have free speech and free ideas. And the universities aren't doing that. I mean, that's what the universities are supposed to be. But they're not facilitating free and open dialogue. What they're doing is inciting resentment. And when you have these diverse, this is why President Trump, I think, is so big on gutting diversity, equity, inclusion, having executive orders to stop all DEI efforts, because they are a dangerous ideology. And look, it's something we need to get out of our academic.
You can see how poisonous.
Sorry, Rita. James?
Oh, well, just Corey, I just wanted to, ask you more specifically about your work that you do with this. I'm just, I almost want to pick you up on something you just said here. You said right-wing values. The schools teach you to hate right-wing values. I would say that it's certainly the experience of an awful lot of parents in Australia that the schools teach your kids to hate normal mainstream values. And tell me a bit about, the work that you do in terms of the schools, because I've been following your X account for a long time. I know right now you've found guys who are doing DEI at UCLA who are celebrating the deaths. But one of the things that I've found since Thursday has been my Twitter has been filled with clips of teachers, primary school teachers, celebrating, saying, yeah, this is so good. How on earth are we supposed to let our kids or grandkids go into schools and classrooms when you might have people in there 7 hours a day pumping them full of this?
And imagine the people who don't put this stuff on social media, and there's a lot of people in the system who aren't as brave or courageous to put all their thoughts for the world to see on social media. Some of them are getting fired, but some others in places like Oregon that I exposed, the superintendent actually responded saying, well, this was on their own time, this was on their personal Facebook account, they're not going to do anything about it.
But what does it say that they feel safe, that they feel like there's social clout for them, and that they're safe to do it?
It's because the superintendents probably agree with a lot of the values that are espoused by these people in their same school system, and so they're not going to hold them accountable. And it's a real shame, But yeah, what you said earlier is the bigger point, right? We have millions of kids. We have about 50 million kids in the U.S. going to government-run educational institutions where they're being indoctrinated for 13 years of their lives from K through 12 for 7 hours a day. So we see all this rot on the higher education campuses, on colleges and universities, but it didn't start there. It starts with K through 12. They're starting to mold the minds of young children, young impressionable minds, and it's... we need to defund these institutions. We need to allow for school choice so that you can say, to heck with this, we're going to send our kids to schools that actually align with our values, who don't have people who glorify violence, who hate our country, who brainwash the kids with anti-Trump rhetoric. I mean, I saw a lot of clips earlier put together where, you had Kamala Harris calling Trump a fascist. You called Tim Walz, the VP candidate, calling Trump a fascist. And you have this stuff on repeat in the media as well. It's not just in the educational institutions, but when you're surrounded with all this ideology, I mean, this same thing almost happened to President Trump. It hit his ear. And I mean, it's just a year later. And now Charlie Kirk, one of the main figureheads in the conservative movement in the United States, is taken out by an assassin. You have people in the school system celebrating it. It's just
Rita.
And one last thing, they try to call him a hypocrite for this because they're saying, oh, look, he supported the Second Amendment and he gets shot. That's like saying you support people driving cars knowing that there's a risk of that there are some deaths because of people driving cars, and saying, oh, you got into a car accident, now we're going to celebrate you getting into a car accident because you support allowing cars. And it's just total insanity, them trying to say that this is okay in any way and to try to blame him for his own assassination. And I do hope that Turning Point USA does grow even stronger than ever. And God bless Charlie and his family and Erica for putting out that brave message yesterday.
I think they are going to create a lot more Charlie Kirks out of this. And you talked about school choice, about parents having the right to send us children to a school that aligns with their values. I would argue those formative years, primary school, secondary school, we call it here, are even more crucial than what they're taught at university. Because at least at university, they would hopefully have some critical thinking. They're at an age where they can feel confident challenging authority. Whilst small kid, 5, 6, 7, 8, they accept what a teacher tells them. So there really is no capacity to challenge that. And tell me about just how corrupted with leftist politics, academia, and the curriculum itself has become.
It's insane. And, I think this is why the teachers' unions in the U.S. fight so hard against school choice. One, we always knew was because of the money. They have a monopoly on funding, but they also have a monopoly on the minds of other people's children. The left in the U.S. doesn't even have to have their own kids anymore. They can infiltrate the government school system and mold the minds of other people's children for such a long time. And that's why I think they fight against letting people go somewhere else harder than anything else. They know they can shape the direction of our country without even having their own children. And so I think we are having a revolution of sorts in the U.S. where we're starting to win these battles because the unions overplayed their hand and showed how far left the rot is in the government school system today. And so 17 of our states have passed universal school choice in 4 years alone. So it's gone from 0 to 100 on the issue. And it's almost been a silver lining of COVID of sorts, where they closed the schools, families saw what was happening in the classroom. And that's what I'm here to talk about at CPAC this coming weekend, Friday to Sunday in Brisbane. But hopefully other countries, not just the U.S., can benefit from allowing the money to follow the child. I know the government in Australia isn't as favorable to the idea at the moment, but things can change in the future, and so we should get those ideas out front and center right now.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned CPAC, Corey. We'll be there. Outsiders next Sunday morning. We'll be from CPAC live, taking questions from the audience. Corey, you'll be there. Obviously, I imagine you've rewritten parts of your speech since the events of the last few days. But CPAC in Brisbane, I'm sure people can still get tickets for that. and looking forward very much to seeing you there. Awful circumstances, but we'll be chatting a lot more. Thanks to Corey DeAngelis for coming onto the show. After the break, Alex Stein. You know him well here on Sky, good friend of Charlie Kirk's, speaking to us in a tick. You're watching Outsiders, and joining us now is a great friend of the show, Alex Stein. Alex, great to see you as always. The piano's there in the background. You're ready to give us a tune, but it's a very sad occasion. Normally you're here to give us a good laugh, but today is just horrific. The events of the death of Charlie Kirk, the assassination. You knew Charlie well. You spent time... More importantly, you spend a lot of time on these university campuses. That's where you go, you speak to people, you entertain and provoke. You're an amazing personality and the work you do. Who can fill Charlie Kirk's shoes, and what was Charlie like as a friend?
Well, first of all, Rowan, nobody can fill Charlie Kirk's shoes. I mean, literally no one, because he had the ability to not only debate with grace and debate respectfully, he had a recall that was unlike anybody else. He was able to quote Bible scripture. He was able to quote, case studies. He literally had the mind of a computer. So nobody's going to be able to go to a college campus and perform and do the same thing that Charlie did. And of course, Charlie was so incredibly gracious, letting me, a crazy, edgy comedian, go and actually represent Turning Point, because that's what Charlie wanted. He wanted to defend the First Amendment more than anything. Freedom of speech was one of the most important things to him. And he was such a great guy. He let me go on these college campuses. He let me act crazy because he knew at the end of the day, the message that I was trying to, proclaim, and the same message that he is trying to proclaim, is that we need to get on these college campuses. We need to have civil discourse and talk things out. And, Charlie said it best: once we stopped talking, they turned to violence. And that's literally what happened. And, the guy was very prophetic in everything he said.
Rita.
He was the happy warrior, wasn't he? He was always so joyful. People would get in his face and just be ugly and scream all sorts of unhinged abuse at him. And he remained calm and polite throughout. Tell me about that, because that, again, is a rare quality, to have someone be vile to you in your face and you don't retaliate. You dismantle their arguments instead of attacking them.
Well, Rita, I mean, you said it best. All of you guys have known me for years now. It's crazy how time flies. And you guys have seen my videos when I go on these college campuses. I provoke them. I get in their face, Yeah. And sadly, if you heard that Alex Stein got shot, people would say, you know what? He had it coming. And I hate that that's the reality, but Charlie never had it coming. Charlie literally never showed anybody one modicum of disrespect, even the people that he disagreed with. He was so respectful. So I don't know. I don't know how he had the ability to keep his cool like that. That's really a characteristic that I'm jealous that I don't have. And Charlie really was just an epic pro when it came to not taking the bait, especially in these debates. He was just the ultra smooth professional. And I think that is why Charlie Kirk was so successful, though, is that his bedside demeanor was that of a future president. And I have no doubt in my mind that if Charlie Kirk was still here, and here in 10 to 20 years, he would be president of the United States.
He was only 31. He achieved so much. I'm 100% with you. I think he would have been president one day. I think it was almost certain. But let's just look at the contrasting styles. Let's have a look at you with Charlie Kirk on a university campus, and here you challenge him about deporting your housemate, I think.
Would you want to kick out my housekeeper? Because we need to protect all big booty Latinas. If you're a 9, you are fine. You get to stay. If you're an 8, we can have an immigration debate. If you're a 6, you can kick bricks. But Charlie, let's protect my housekeeper. Why does Juanita have to go, Charlie?
You said she's illegal, right?
She's illegal, yes.
Oh, illegal. Okay,
illegal. Oh, yeah, she's very illegal. No papers.
I'm sorry. They all got to go.
Brilliant. You see, Charlie, Alex, you still got a laugh in there, which is fantastic. James.
But, seriously, though, on this sort of broader question, though, where does the whole, not just the Charlie Kirk movement go, but also in terms of going to campuses and so on? I mean, does the whole complexion of doing what people do, whether it's a what Charlie Kirk did or what you do, or conservative speakers in general, is there going to be some reticence now? Is this going to achieve some sort of goal of shutting conservatives out of campuses with basically, the left saying, look, we can't have you on our campus because it's not safe because we might do something?
James, you're exactly right. And before Charlie, Ben Shapiro became very well known from going on campuses. Stephen Crowder, a lot of other people have had these campus debates. Just Charlie Kirk was the best at it. He had basically mastered it. So you're exactly right. These campuses, I had over 12 schools scheduled. And what they're going to say is they're probably going to say that there is now a safety concern and make us go inside of a classroom. And the problem is, though, James, is the open air debate was the best structure because it allowed people that weren't even interested, didn't even know Charlie or me or on campus, and it encourages them and invites them to get engaged with the debate. And once you're in a classroom locked off from the rest of the university, it just doesn't have the same effect. It doesn't have the town hall, public, it just separates it. So I really hope that they don't shut it down.
But I mean, just on this whole sort of idea of why he was targeted, it's all pretty clear. It's really gelling why this all happened. We suspected from the start. But this notion now that conservatives are shut down, that they're shut off from the broader debate of ideas, was he targeted, do you think, because he was so successful at these town halls? Was it his success at shifting? We saw the charts of, young male voters in particular shifting, turning red, turning towards Trump over the last 2-3 years even. Was he a victim of his own success?
1000% Charlie was a victim of his success because Charlie had become a supernova juggernaut that could not be stopped. And so people were scared. People were mad. And really, Charlie, you see all these people that are celebrating his death. They're sick, ignorant people. But they didn't even understand what Charlie stood for. Charlie was a moderate guy. He really wanted to bring people together. He didn't want to divide people. And because he was actually good, because his message was actually, based on biblical standards, and he's a guy that actually cared about making the world a better place, that's why they had to take him out. Because there's so many other people that go and, including myself, we have skeletons in our closet. There was no skeletons in Charlie Kirk's closet. And because he was so good and because he was so successful, that is why he was victimized in the ultimate way. So you're 100% correct, James.
Alex Stein, it's always great to chat to you. And next time we'll be getting more humor because we don't want you to give up. You keep people laughing. And to me, humor is the greatest weapon of all. Thanks for your thoughts on Charlie Kirk. And keep safe, Alex, but please keep going strong. Great man there, Alex Stein. Coming up, we'll have more to say about the passing of Charlie Kirk, and we'll be joined by John Hinderaker, who also knew Charlie, to get his thoughts on the legacy of Charlie Kirk in a tip. Hello, you're watching Outsiders with Rita Panahi, with James Morrow and myself, Rowan Dean, on this special tribute to Charlie Kirk. Well, when I saw the face of the alleged killer of Charlie Kirk yesterday morning, my heart sunk. Not because I was shocked, but because the face was so instantly recognizable, so familiar. It's a face you see in trendy inner-city cafes, serving you in your local shop, next to you at the traffic lights, queuing up for some groceries, staring out of the rows of some TV audience. It's the bland face of normality. It's the face of the young man whose life stretches out before him, offering greater rewards, greater safety, greater security, prosperity and riches than any similar man born in any previous time throughout history. Yet below the surface is harboring an incomprehensible rage, an innocent-looking face that disguises the intense hatred, arrogance, intolerance, confusion, and putrid loathing that lurks behind those cold eyes, the arrogant sneer of the modern, well-educated, radicalized college student. The modern left has abandoned the struggle to fulfill the aspirations of the working classes and instead focuses now on poisoning the souls of the university-educated elites with a toxic ideology of neo-Marxist nihilism, wokeness, identity politics, and anarchy that views any dissent or opposing opinions as not just politically or intellectually wrong, which is fine, but morally wrong. Wearing this armor of leftist ideological purity, allows an individual to indulge their darkest fantasies at the same time as feeling morally virtuous, morally superior even. The battle of ideas has become a fight for the soul. And it was all planned. The long march through the institutions is more than just a cliche. It is and was a deliberate tactic by hardcore left-wing academics in Italy and Germany, a plan concocted back in the 1930s and then turbocharged through the 1960s and 70s to infuse the so-called neutral or politically independent institutions of Western civil society, in particular, but not exclusively, the education system, with hardcore, radical left-wing ideas. And it worked. Universities were once proud places of learning that concentrated genuinely on turning out the smartest and the brightest in all manner of fields, in the hopes of both furthering intellectual and scientific knowledge and ensuring lucrative careers in the private and public sectors for graduates. Now, Western universities are toxic cesspits of communist and anti-Western indoctrination. Indoctrination factories, as Megyn Kelly calls them. Charlie Kirk sought to challenge this poisonous ideology directly by engaging in that most precious of democratic platforms, open and honest, one-on-one, eyeball-to-eyeball debate. And it cost him his life. The alleged shooter was apparently a very bright kid, a shy kid, but a happy kid, who was admitted to university on a prestigious academic scholarship. But it appears he attended only one semester before dropping out. What happened in that one semester at university? Was he radicalized there by some teacher or academic? Why did he drop out? I guess we'll find out soon enough. Or was he radicalized online? By whom? What podcasts was he listening to? What websites did he visit? Apparently, he spent a lot of time gaming. We now know the bullets made reference to gay, trans, and furry ideologies. Utah Governor Spencer Cox said yesterday that, quote, "It's very clear to us that this was a person who was deeply indoctrinated with leftist ideology." End of quote. When and by whom? Meanwhile, it has emerged that Tyler Robinson had reportedly been living with his transgender lover, who was in the process of transitioning from a man to a woman, according to police. That's the same roommate cooperating with police about text messages about the rifle and bullet casings. Donald Trump blames radical left lunatics for fueling domestic terrorism within the United States, and it's hard to disagree with him. I would add to that all those who for years now have been gleefully demonizing conservatives, calling anyone who's not of the left a fascist or a racist or a white supremacist or Hitler, and the insidious practice of cancel culture. The long march through so many institutions, academia, the media, so many others, has been devastating. Whether or not you include Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, and the other Democrats, along with most of the media and academia, in Donald Trump's definition of radical left lunatics is up to you. But have a look at this compilation before you answer.
Do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do.
No one has ever been more dangerous to this country than Donald Trump, and he is a fascist to his core.
Hey, let me shut down the Senate! We are at war!
We're at a war right now.
We are at war.
So you have to be willing to do whatever is necessary in order to save the country.
And that's why the gloves are off.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
And yes, there are many threats to democracy. We see it with these extreme candidates.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be.
You can only push people so far, and then they start to take matters into their own hands.
Take matters into their own hands? Well, the shooter certainly did that. The mainstream media have equally repeatedly fueled the flames.
The MAGA movement is a threat.
Michelle says that, when they go low, we go high.
No. With all due respect, if they go low, we don't go high. When they go low, we kick them. We take them to the mud and choke them out.
And make sure that they stay down. And you know what? Kick them when they're down because they deserve it.
Get up in the face of some Congress people.
We are going to be in your face. We are going to be on your...
We have to fight this in the streets.
We're going to fight it in the streets. It's time to step out of your comfort zone and step out into the streets.
To our Republican colleagues, if you do not see the light, we will bring the fire.
We will bring the fire. All Charlie Kirk ever did was debate people, anyone who wanted to debate, and he invited them to prove him wrong through debate. Regardless of who you were, what you believed, he would happily chat for hours with good grace and humour and debate you.
It's kind of hard for gay conservatives because there's not a lot of us. So, like, what do you have to say to other gay people who need to realize, like, they do have a choice?
Yeah, first of all, welcome to the conservative movement. I don't think you should introduce yourself just based on your sexual attractions.
No, I agree. I like because
that's not who you are.
I like to be thought of as a person, and
for sure, you are a complete human being, and I'm sure you treat people well, and you're studying something. So I want to get away with this idea that you're gay anything. I just think that we have gone a long way in the negative direction in this country, where we act as if the most important part of your identity is what you do in the bedroom.
Possibly one of the sickest reactions to his death was this image, which appeared within hours on college campus notice boards, an image of the blood spurting from Charlie Kirk's throat as he dies, with the caption, "Debate this." The reaction to Charlie's death have been earth-shattering. On the right side of politics, there is understandable anger.
So again, the Democratic Party and all liberal organizations need to be labeled as terrorist organizations, and anybody who supports the two of them need to be labeled as terrorists.
On the left, well, some truly demented and psychotic celebrations.
I think it's kind of poetic justice that the man who was spreading nothing but hatred and, dishonest rhetoric got pew-pewed in the throat.
I just wanted to play a bit of music to commemorate the now ended life of Charlie Kirk. And I hope you'll all join me in this meaningful moment.
I guess Rocco will never be able to float. Oh, well, too bad. Bye, Rocco.
Thoughts and prayers for Charlie Kirk. Thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers.
But I'm confused as to how you thought the revolution was going to be magically bloodless.
This wasn't the one we were hoping for, but a welcome surprise nonetheless. Rest in peace, you won't be missed, Charlie.
I just heard that someone shot Charlie Kirk? Dang it. Shucks.
Absolutely grotesque. And then there's these girls, no surprise, students at the University of Amsterdam.
How do you look at the death of Charlie Kirk?
I think he deserved it. I really believe he deserved it.
I don't know about his positions. I feel like he was so controversial and he probably shouldn't have a platform in the first place. So, yeah, probably a little deserved.
I'm glad he's not with us anymore.
What did you say?
I'm glad he's not with us anymore.
Okay.
And I think that's a good thing.
You actually mean this, what you're saying right now?
Yeah, I actually mean it.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Then there's this sick story out of England of the president-elect of the Oxford Union. Oxford, one of the great universities. This repugnant individual called George Aberoni, another student mired in leftism who did debate Charlie Kirk at Oxford only a few months ago, now laughing at his death on social media. Disgraceful. But it's not all so grim. There's an intriguing number of left-wingers who have said enough is enough and can no longer tolerate being in the Democrats.
People celebrating what happened to Charlie Kirk today, it's just disgusting behavior. The fact that I have been a part of the left for 7 years, I never thought we'd get to the point where I would have to look at my own party and be like, oh, hold on, I can't support you anymore.
And I'm seeing a lot of people who were on the left say that they're no longer going to be on the left anymore.
I can't be a liberal no more. You see the comments? I hope the gun is okay. The same people asking for moral decency. I cannot, in good faith, align myself with you guys anymore.
And it's certainly not my left. It's not any part of the left that I participate in. But this is the left. These people are part of the left. They are our staffers. They're in our cohorts. They're repping Young Democrats of America. They're in our colleges. They are part of the left, and it's a problem.
As a registered Democrat, all I have to say is the Charlie Kirk shooting just proves that we are the worst, man. My party is the worst.
This was the day that I decided I'm never voting Democrat again. I cannot stand with you people anymore. Although there's a lot of people on the right that I disagree with, looking at your comments, gross.
I just witnessed Charlie Kirk get assassinated. It was the most awful thing I've ever seen in my life. He shot him in the neck and blood went everywhere. And the worst part of it all was the liberals who were there were cheering.
You know, I'm a left-leaning moderate, but the left has done a really great job of pushing us all over to the right.
And what I find truly inspiring is how support for Charlie Kirk has come from some of the most unexpected places. People who, according to the stereotypes painted by the left, should have loathed Charlie Kirk. But it turns out quite the opposite was true.
So any of you weirdos coming in here, Charlie fought for the truth. He debated people all over this country, and he didn't care what you were. He still had a conversation with everybody. Why did I respect him? Because he knows reality.
I don't know him, but I have been watching him for years and just following him, and then I just think about his wife and his kids.
Just wanted to come on here and say rest in peace to Charlie Kirk. He went out doing what he loved. He was open to conversations, but people that are afraid to get into those kind of situations resort to something worse.
This is an attack on freedom of speech, no matter how you look at it, whether you like Charlie, you didn't like Charlie.
You guys keep asking me, oh, what changed? Oh, well, you used to be so apolitical, and now this. Because of this behavior from the left. They say you're hateful while they display the hate. They call you a Nazi while they're the ones who are acting like Nazis.
Then this young girl, rightly, fears for what Charlie Kirk's death means for America.
He was an advocate for young people to speak their voice in a safe space, to have open discussions on things that are difficult to talk about. He never promoted violence. He wanted everyone to come together and have an open forum of discussion so that we could all see eye to eye. People are going to be angry at this. People are going to start to get mad. This could literally cause a civil war, and I don't think people realize that.
And then this young man, who was one of the last to ask Charlie a question before he was shot, and is quite rightly still in shock. Have a look.
The point that I was trying to make is how peaceful the left was right before he got shot.
But here's the astonishing thing. All around the world, from haka dancers in New Zealand to late-night vigils to groups of students, it is clear that Charlie Kirk in death will be even more powerful, more vocal, more inspirational, more effective than he was in life.
Also a lot of Israeli flags to remember and honor Charlie's support for Israel. But a concert's about to get underway. The memorial service, prayer vigil for Charlie Kirk. Easily, again, hundreds of people here.
Whether you are religious or not, it is not possible to ignore the obvious Christ-like parallels with Charlie Kirk. Like the young man from Nazareth, Charlie was a man of simple means, never went to university himself, who simply believed in the power of words and ideas over force and violence, in the sanctity of every human life, in the power of the truth and of love. His lepers were those sexually distraught and confused kids who he would happily ask to come to the front of the queue to debate him. His loaves and fishes were the microphone and the ideas he gave as nutrition to the soul to those intellectually starved college kids who came to hear him, confused or angry about the modern world, self-righteous in their own woke religion, or simply curious about what he had to say. His flock grew exponentially across America and across the world simply through the forcefulness of his words. The more he spoke, the more followers he gained. In the hundreds of thousands, if not millions. His moneylenders in the temple were the pampered progressive professors of academia selling their worthless degrees. Charlie called the modern university degrees a scam. His crucifixion came from a sniper's rifle in the middle of a university campus packed with crowds. We saw the sickening sight of those Judases in the audience whooping with joy at his death. The Democrat hierarchy have washed their hands of their own role in his martyrdom. But above all, Charlie converted many to his cause, whilst many went away unmoved. But Charlie loved them all and held hatred for no man or woman. He never judged. Sure, he wanted to save their souls, or at least make them feel comfortable in their own God-given bodies. He prayed for their political salvation, but he respected and loved every single one of them just for who they were and as they were. And it showed.
My high school kids talked about Charlie Kirk all morning. Positive conversations about Charlie Kirk all morning. They're impacted. They're mad. But passionate, compassion all morning.
Through Charlie Kirk's death, any tortured young souls may now find a path forward through the craziness and confusion of leftist ideology. Let us sincerely hope so. Kirk means church in Old English. Just a coincidence, I'm sure. Joining us now from the centre of the American experiment, its president and our great mate, John Hinderaker. John, we normally, well, there's often things that are tragic and terrible that we have to talk to you about, but this one is probably one of the worst. You knew Charlie Kirk. What are your thoughts, John, on his passing and his assassination?
Well, there's so much that you could say, Rowan. Yeah, I knew Charlie. My organization and his organization, Turning Point, collaborated on a number of things over the years. I saw Charlie for the last time earlier this year at the Turning Point headquarters down in Phoenix. And all the things that people are saying about Charlie are true, of course. Here's the one thing I would add, Rowan, and that is that Charlie was one of the most energetic people I have ever known. Just looking at his schedule would make you feel tired. He was all over the place. One of the most hardworking people, energetic people. And, you know, one way of looking at it, Rowan, is that Charlie lived the way a man might live if he knew that he was only going to have 31 years.
Wow. Rita.
Yeah, that's that does make you think. He was talked about as a future leader in politics. People said he has the perfect background to become president one day. Did you believe that when you met with him and you dealt with him? Could he have been president?
Well, Charlie was a very talented guy, and he had a wonderful knack for dealing with people and leading people. And of course, that's the ultimate skill you need if you want to be in politics. You know, recently people have been saying that Charlie had been talking about his future maybe lying not in politics, but in the ministry. And going to becoming a religious leader on a full-time basis. I would say that whatever Charlie had decided to do, he would have succeeded at.
James.
You know, John, I've been thinking a lot about this for the last 3 days, trying to make sense of all of this and what the historical parallels are. I know Rowan made a sort of Christ-like analogy, but I think really there's also another analogy with Socrates, because of course Socrates was killed for corrupting the youth of Athens, for giving them bad ideas that were against the establishment and against, you know, what we call the lefty establishment of the universities, the Democrats. today, and he connected so well to those young people. And I would just like your thoughts on how that connection that he had to young people and the younger people, the people under 30 I talked to who are really big fans of his, they were all upset because they all said he was so passionate about making us believe again and figure out a way out of the problems in this system that we've been born into that's not serving us well. And, was he in a sense a martyr for the fact that he was able to give the youth another way out from what the hard left establishment, the universities, the media, the teachers' unions, all of them had told them was their fate?
Well, that's a really interesting question, James. I mean, there's no doubt that the ideas that Charlie stood for, patriotism and faith and really kind of old-fashioned values, are in today's world are countercultural. He was the guy who stood apart from the establishment, apart from the received wisdom, apart from the professors who many students realize don't really know what they're talking about. And so I think you're right. I think Charlie did play that role. But I would say if he was a martyr to anything, he was a martyr to free speech. Mm-hmm. He didn't just advocate free speech. He practiced it. He spent his life practicing it. I was thinking about this, and I thought, if you're opposed to free speech, what are you in favor of? And the answer is you're in favor of censorship. And I think in Charlie's killing, we were reminded once again that the ultimate censor is a bullet.
Now, John, I just want to ask you, the universities, James mentioned Socrates and the universities, intellectual thought and free speech. Charlie wouldn't have needed to go out there if our modern education system, if our universities were living up to the ideal that most parents think the universities are delivering. So is this the wake-up moment? Is this actually, can you foresee maybe those university professors suddenly going, hang on, we've lost the plot here, we need to change? Donald Trump is trying to change them. Can they be reformed?
Rowan, I don't know. Maybe you're more optimistic than I am. That's true. To believe it. These institutions are so set in their ways and so isolated. We've seen reactions to Charlie's murder from a number of college professors, college administrators, as well as high school teachers and elementary school teachers, and they're among those who are rejoicing at his killing. I think what's happening more than reform of those institutions, and we certainly hope for that, but I think what's realistically happening more is young people deciding, look, I don't have to go to college. There are other paths to a successful life. And, it's well known that Charlie didn't go to college, but it wasn't because he couldn't get in. He got into a very fine university. He sat down with the president of that university and said, I'm not sure I really want to go to college. I have this vision for what I want to do. I want to start this organization. I want to lead young people in a different direction. And the president of the university said, Charlie, you do what you think you need to do. If you ever decide you want to come to school here, there will always be a place for you. Amazing. So I think Charlie's a great example of somebody, he could have gone to college, but he thought a different path made more sense.
Rita.
I want to ask you about the profound change we are seeing in America, because the culture has shifted. We saw that even before Charlie's murder. We had Donald Trump in New York being cheered. We've seen since then him at Yankee Stadium and chants of Trump and USA. We've seen NFL, Major League Baseball hold a moment's silence for Charlie Kirk. A couple of years ago, that wouldn't have happened. Do you feel that change happening in the US, and where else is it evident?
Well, I sure hope so, Rita. I agree with your point. A few years ago, the National Football League, they had these end racism slogans, different ones written in the end zone and on players' helmets and so on. And they're finally getting away from that. And I was impressed that the New York Yankees had a tribute to Charlie Kirk before their game the other night, the NFL Thursday night game. They stopped with a tribute and a moment of silence for Charlie Kirk. I think you're absolutely right. I don't think that would have happened a few years ago. I also think it illustrates the impact of this event, how shocking it was, the fact that we all saw it. I mean, I think I think it really has had a profound impact. And we see that in the reaction, the vigils, these vigils and people at concerts and so on. And they're totally peaceful. I wondered, was there going to be a violent pushback here? But everything we've seen has been totally peaceful. And we've seen it across the United States. We've also seen it in Europe. And so I think it's been really, really interesting just to see how people have responded.
John Hinderaker, always great to chat to you and to get your insights there on the passing and assassination of Charlie Kirk. Thanks, John, so much. After the break, James Morrow's Truth Bomb.
Hello, you're watching Outsiders. I'm James Morrow here with your hosts Rowan Dean and Rita Panahi. And this week on a very special Truth Bomb, let's have a game of Republicans Pounce. Yes, I'm talking about the catchphrase, Republicans Pounce, that Democrats and the left always use to try to reframe an issue every time Republicans and the right point out the bad behavior of the left. It's a phrase that's been being used for a long time. I actually first found it being used in 1933 in the New York Times, of course, but it has in the years since been used to attack conservatives for everything from making a big deal about the Hunter Biden laptop to suggesting that, hey, maybe people should be able to use public transportation to get home from a shift at work without being stabbed to death by a madman who'd been arrested and released dozens of times. Who would have thought, which happened recently to a Ukrainian refugee recently in Charlotte, North Carolina, just trying to get home on the light rail. Well, now, of course, we've got the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and the Republicans' pounce game has heated up again. They're doing it again. In the wake of the murder of Charlie Kirk, there has been, of course, joyous, ghoulish, disgraceful celebration of his killing across vast swathes of the online left, which, of course, means you know who is the real problem here. Yes, it's the right. Now, the New York Times reports now that, quote, right-wing activists urge followers to expose those celebrating Kirk killing, unquote. And even worse, the widespread and fast-moving campaign has already resulted in lost jobs, suspensions, and internal investigations, heightening tensions online between supporters and detractors of Charlie Kirk, unquote. Oh no, yep. Republicans, they're pouncing again. But let's see what the Times are complaining about being exposed and how it's all working out for them. Because, of course, the rules of cancel culture have finally been turned around. So let's go through some of these examples, shall we? How about MSNBC's Matthew Dowd? I'm sure you're familiar with this one.
And I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful actions. And I think that's the environment we're in, that people just, you can't stop with these sort of awful thoughts you have and then saying these awful words and not expect awful actions to take place.
Matt.
And that's the unfortunate environment we're in.
Well, and he's no longer on the MSNBC rosters. He was too much even for that loony left network. But it's not just the great and the good who are getting in trouble. That's the most famous one. But who else might there be? Well, there was this incredible incident in Michigan where Office Max employees, it's a big office supply and printing store, refused to print posters for a Charlie Kirk vigil in Michigan because they didn't want to print propaganda.
So we came in for an order earlier to print a poster for a vigil tonight.
Yes,
for somebody that passed. It's not
it's propaganda. I'm sorry. We don't put that here.
Alrighty. So, what's your name?
Carol.
I'm print supervisor.
I'm one of the managers.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, unfortunately,
So they say they don't print political propaganda. So this is somebody that passed away a couple years ago.
That's political propaganda, unfortunately.
So this is for a prayer tonight, for a prayer vigil?
Mm-hmm. It's still propaganda, unfortunately.
What makes it propaganda?
Because he's a political figure, and I don't have to. Our general manager is going to be in on Monday.
Well, thanks to the power of the internet, they've been exposed. And guess what? You don't need to boycott Office Max, because within hours of that video hitting the internet, the corporate headquarters released a statement saying the associates in question are no longer working for the organization. Chalk one up for the good guys. But how about this charmer? DC comic book artist Gretchen Felker Martin, who posted after Charlie Kirk died, "Thoughts and prayers, you Nazi bitch." Well, guess what? Another one bites the dust because DC Comics canceled her upcoming series. Gosh, guys, I guess on the left, cancel culture is not looking so good now, is it? But let's keep going. Oh, here we have the assistant dean of Middle Tennessee State University who posted, "Looks like Charlie spoke his fate into existence." Well, I guess what? She's been given the sack. She tweeted her fate into existence. But hey, let's keep going, shall we? This fellow, Glenn Turf from Miami Country Day School, posted, "He died. Oh well. Ironically, the promoted gun usage, and guess what? He's gone too." I could keep going here. There are countless teachers, so many teachers, a startling number of teachers involved in this. Medicos, even someone who worked for the Secret Service, have all gotten the chop for gloating over the death of Charlie Kirk. And you know what? I don't have a problem with this at all, because sure, free speech is important, but so is experiencing the consequences of your actions, namely setting up a world where people could get fired for saying things that made other people feel uncomfortable, icky, or bad. Now, of course, the New York Times was one of the biggest proponents of cancel culture back in the day, before it abruptly did a 180 on this starting a few years ago. And the same progressive left that is now celebrating Kirk's death was once the biggest proponent of getting people fired for saying the wrong thing online. Well, too bad, so sad. Too often the right says, "Oh, well, we don't want to descend to leftist tactics," and guess what? They lose time and time again. So it's good to see the left's errors being, dare I say, pounced upon, and them getting a taste of their own medicine.
Great stuff. Thanks, James. Well, we should also look at some of the
we've
other
got
things.
some breaking news.
Yeah, we've got some breaking news.
We've got some breaking news
yes,
on this. So
let's take it.
We spoke earlier about Zali Steggall,
Yes.
the Warringah MP. Well, she has now posted, and this is a great example of the pounce phenomenon. She has posted a statement here, and I will just read out the key bit to you here.
What is that? The headline seems to be political violence is never the answer. I'm sorry.
Well,
did she not like a post where it said, "Is violence sometimes necessary?" Yes. Zali, are you confused?
Today's yes,
let me go on here.
No.
Let me go on here.
How she justify this?
Rita, there's a bigger. She says, "I do not agree with or endorse everything Hannah has written. Whilst liking does not equal endorsement, for the avoidance of doubt, I have chosen to unlike the post." But here's where it gets great. Here's where the pouncing comes on. In typical fashion, Advance Australia has sought to selectively reflect the post in their ad to stoke outrage and division. Advance Australia is a dangerous organization with deep U.S. right-wing conservative roots, seeking to influence Australia.
Not deep right-wing
So it's not her fault. It's not her fault for liking a post that seems to endorse political violence. It's Advance Australia's fault for pointing it out.
Also, you don't like a post, you don't endorse. It's a like. You're not bookmarking it. You're not noting it. You are liking it. There is no dislike button on Instagram. You either like something, or if you disagree with it, perhaps you could have posted it and critiqued what you disagreed with, but you didn't. You endorsed it by liking it. And let me read you what she liked.
Yes, please.
This is a member of Parliament. The post started with...
Zali Steggall. Let's reiterate. This is Zali Steggall, a member of the Teal Party in the Australian Parliament, the woman who replaced Tony Abbott, one of our greatest prime ministers, but anyway, in his seat. This is what she liked about the death of Charlie Kirk.
Put up by some far-left influencer who seems to have archived this post because it disappeared. It looked like she deleted it and it's reappeared. So Zali's now gone there and unliked it. I mean, how pathetic can you get? But this is what Zali Steggall liked, and it wasn't until there was media attention that she put out this pitiful statement. She liked this. "Am I glad Charlie Kirk will no longer spread his extremist messaging? Yes." That's what she liked. That's saying they're
Yes.
glad Charlie is dead, murdered.
And by the
Am
way,
I
and that messaging, let's not forget, is very mainstream messaging. And you see by the thousands of people who've been out in the streets having vigils for Charlie Kirk, it's messaging that Australians agree with.
Of course it's not extremist messaging. And this is the framing coming from some far-left idiot influencer. The important thing is we've got an MP who's endorsed it by liking it. Goes on. Do I believe he caused more harm than good? Yes. Is violence sometimes necessary? Yes. Is this act of political violence an act of progress? No. Do I understand respect? Some progressives disagree with me. And then it's got some further statements that are, again, highly troubling, highly questioning for anyone with a fully functioning brain and any sort of moral compass. And Charlie Steggall, of all the billions of posts on social media, on Instagram, she liked this. And now she's trying to tell us liking a post doesn't mean I actually agree with it. Charlie, get off Instagram. You obviously have no idea. A 14-year-old know how it works. You don't understand that if you like a post, people rightly assume that you agree with its content.
But let me take it further than that. Charlie Steggall made a great play when she was elected of all the young people who came around and supported her climate change activism. So Charlie Steggall is a role model to young people. That's how she sold herself. And as a role model to young people, she is endorsing and liking violence against Charlie Kirk, and by extension of that, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, which that tweet suggests she likes the comments made by Hannah Ferguson.
Oh, no,
justifying violence. Justifying violence. And now she's saying, I don't justify violence, I don't justify violence. This woman should be censored in Parliament. And if we had an opposition, what the opposition would be saying, they would be saying...
A what?
And it took Advance. Charlie Steggall rightly points to Advance Australia, which is a group not dissimilar in some ways to Turning Point, but a group, an activist conservative group, who've come out and pointed out that she made this tweet. Where were the opposition? Where was Susan Lee? Why weren't they out there saying, look what this member of Parliament is liking, we want her censored, we're going to attack her on the floor of Parliament for these disgraceful like in support of these disgraceful comments. But no, there's no noise, nothing. In fact, last week, the opposition attacked Advance and said, they're not really any good. So we don't have a conservative opposition in this country. It's an absolute disgrace, other, of course, than One Nation. Sorry, James.
Well, no, not at all. And I mean, we're not really going to spend too much time on it, as Bob Catter might say. But, the Kiama by-election in New South Wales just shows where these modern liberals are. But this whole point, this whole imbroglio, this statement, Charlie Steggall, I would like to say, thank you, Charlie Steggall, the member for Riga, because you have just proven the exact point that I made in my editorial at the start of this segment, which is that every single time the left screws up, they go and they figure out a way to blame the right for pointing it out. Thank you.
You know what? I would have more respect for Charlie Steggall if she had the backbone, if she had a principled position where she said, I did like this post and here's why I liked it. I may disagree with her vehemently, but I would have more respect for someone who backs that position instead of this cowardly, ridiculous statement going and unliking it. And you asked about where Susan Lee is. Susan Lee is busy attacking her most effective and popular MP, Jacinta Price, and getting her out of the shadow.
We're going to take a short break and we're going to talk exactly about that very point. But the people of Warringah, you voted for this moron. You could have had Tony Abbott, who you used to have. Hope you feel proud of yourselves. Taking a short break. And we'll be back with more Outsiders. Well, Wally of the Week is our little segment where we have a look at some of the silliest people around in politics at the moment. We've just mentioned Susan Lee, the so-called opposition leader, the so-called conservative. I can't actually say the words Susan Lee and conservative in the same breath without bursting out laughing. But anyway, she managed this week, Rita, to fire the most successful politician, the most loved politician in not only conservative Australia, but all of Australian politics, and that would be Senator Jacinta Price. Our Indigenous Aboriginal Member of Parliament, who's absolutely would have loved Charlie Kirk, was a passionate supporter of conservatism, and even tried to say, make Australia great again.
Well,
and they didn't like that either.
I'm sure she is still a passionate supporter of conservatism, though she is no longer on the shadow front bench. I mean, this is more redeeming 2.0. This is just so stupid. I mean, more so than anything, never mind how foolish it is and how really, if you have a look at the transcript, if you have a listen to the ABC interview, no reasonable person would look at that, listen to that, and come out of that saying, this is terribly hurtful, it's racist, it's insulting, you must apologise, you must go on some sort of...
So just to backtrack,
What she said was, talked about one of the reasons Labor loves mass migration is that they see an electoral advantage in it. They're bringing in new voters. And she mentioned the Indian community voting predominantly for Labor. Now, this followed just a week earlier, a Labor pollster, Samara, saying that at the last election, around 85% of Indian-born migrants voted for Labor. Now, when Samara said that, when a Labor pollster said that, there was no outrage. There was no one coming out saying that's racist, that's offensive, that's hurtful. It was just a point that was made. But once Jacinta makes the same point about the predominance of Labor voters in this migrant group, she's not just demonised.
She's fired. She loses a job.
And I just cannot get over the stupidity, James. It's the lack of political nous here is astonishing.
Well, it's not just lack of political nous, it's also the incredible political game playing that's going on inside the Liberal Party. Because remember, when all of this went down and when the controversy started, 10 days now, however long it was ago, it wasn't Susan Ley that called up Jacinta Price and said, we got a problem here, you need to get there and back. It was Alex Hawke.
Yes.
You know, it was her point man in the centre-right moderate faction, and it is this moderate liberal thing that is crushing, I think, the Liberal Party. I mentioned a moment ago, we had a by-election in Kiama down on the south coast of New South Wales yesterday.
How did that go for the Libs?
It did go well. They got completely trashed.
Oh, what a
they
surprise.
got completely trashed. But, you know, you've got this moderate faction of the Libs that cares more about their own sinecures and their own renewables constituents and people like that, rather than they do about actually, like, creating something conservative. But the thing that far more telling to me, and by the way, kicking her off the front bench is going to wind up redounding on Susan Ley, because now she will have, Jacinta Price will have a lot more freedom to operate, of course. In the press and so on, as a backbencher. So put that aside. The bigger issue, too, now is the Libs still don't have any policy. And yesterday it came out that the Liberals are going to set up not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 new committees to work out what liberal values and policies are. 5 new committees. So they are doing anything they can.
They don't know anything. What are we doing? What's our policy on? Anyone got the polling from the thing? Anyone got any ideas? Get Kevin Rudd on the phone and he can give us some ideas. I mean, they are a joke.
They will do absolutely anything they can to avoid actually having a policy on something. And this means that, you know, I keep saying this. The next election is already underway. Labor is stealing such a march from the Liberals. They're trying to get all of their candidates in seats they hold and seats they don't locked in by the end of the year so that they can spend 2 years campaigning. That's what the Libs are up against.
Well, I can tell you, if the Libs have any interest in becoming electable again, in actually taking it up to Labor, here's a little suggestion. Let's forget about having this disastrous, inept woman as leader who doesn't know what she stands for other than attacking someone who's more conservative than her within the party. Let's get someone, I don't know, like an Andrew Hastie, who's actually capable, who's electable, who's likeable, who's got principles that he sticks with, whether he, the flavour of the month or not. I think a Hastie Price ticket could do very well.
Would win. There's no question about it. The joke is,
as the leader.
Look at last week. You had Susan Lee doing nothing. You had
James.
You had Julian Leeson tripping all over himself.
James has heard something.
No, I haven't heard anything. Well, I have.
Exclusive.
I will tell you that I think Susan Lay's leadership will be terminated by the end of this year.
Oh, absolutely, no question.
So that we know.
I agree.
But also,
should be end of the week. She lost the leadership last week because, I'm sorry, you cannot be the leader and demand demand loyalty if you don't show loyalty. It's a two-way street. You give loyalty to your backbenchers and you get loyalty in return. The moment Jacinta Price was under pressure over the Indian immigration comments, Susan Lee should have been right out there saying, I support my whatever she is, assistant minister. I support Jacinta Price. And the way the Labor Party are manipulating immigration into this country is a disgrace. And if we win government, we will stop it. And I applaud Jacinta Price for raising this very important question. That's what you do as a leader, and you get loyalty because you earn loyalty because you show loyalty. Instead, we had that idiot Alex Hawke you mentioned, one of the least likeable politicians on the planet, let alone in Australia, out there. And then you had Julian Leeser tripping over himself. What a shambles. Susan Lee's, it's finished. It's over. She's gone.
Sure, but you know what? I'm just going to put this out there here, and I want everybody here to remember this. When it comes to the Libs, they have not hit rock bottom yet. So just watch. Just watch.
Oh, no, please, James, please be wrong. Please be wrong.
Susan Lee, they have recorded their lowest ever primary vote in Newspoll since Newspoll started measuring that metric. I don't know how much lower they could fall. Right now, they are completely rudderless. In fact, they're worse than rudderless. They're actually contemptible because of the way they have treated people with the courage to fight, to actually take a stand on important issues. And it was, unlike the more redeeming issue where it was really the media were complicit in whipping up that hysteria that spooked the Libs, with this particular saga, it's the Libs
they did it to
who
themselves.
kept giving oxygen to this story, who kept prolonging it day after day.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. We'll come back. We'll discuss the amazing protests, pro-English, pro-conservative protests that are coming out of the United Kingdom in a tick. You're watching Outsiders, and just to mention, at Hobart this evening at 5 p.m, there's a Charlie Kirk vigil, so go along to that. But over in Britain, there's been these massive, they say maybe 1 million people, maybe one of the biggest marches ever, anti-immigration, pro-UK marches throughout London. Look at this huge crowds, Rita.
Oh, the crowds are incredible. The authorities are saying it's over 100,000, so they always downplay these sorts of protests.
There are other people are saying up to 1 million.
Unbelievable.
Others are saying.
That.
And you look at how the ordinary British people have been absolutely abused by the British state over the last, particularly the last several months, where this Starmer government has, basically criminalized waving the flag of their own nation, where this government has said explicitly, we prioritize the rights of refugees to go into hotels in your town over your own right to safety. This diminution of the value of British citizenship, this is why we are seeing such an out-on-the-streets rebellion.
Wow. Massive anti-immigration march. And here in Australia, the sentiment would be the same, and the opposition fire the person who raises it as a political issue.
And don't let anybody call you this far-right
If you
violence.
let Senator Jacinta Price be in a march, you'd be 1 million people here in Australia as well. No question, in my opinion.
Well, and we had a coalition MPs telling people not to march, so that's pretty much what's happening in Australia.
Exactly.
Just quickly, there's reports now from the US, from Wisconsin Now's reporting that Lance Twiggs, this was the transgender boyfriend of Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin, Tyler Robinson. The family said they had to cut ties with this individual because of his hostility towards anyone supporting conservative or Christian values. So
there we go. Hard left ideology in the universities. Thank you so much for watching our Outsiders special commemorating the tragic death of Charlie Kirk, but he certainly will not disappear. You can watch Outsiders always, and of course The World According to Rowan Dean and James Morrow's US report, and of course the wonderful Rita Panahi show with Lefties losing it. That's Outsiders. Hope you've enjoyed today's show. A very sad day, but the fight goes on and we will win.